Ricky Bell continued the glorious tradition of the USC tailback, a position like center field for the Yankees that is held in reverence. Number 42 surpassed the achievements of Mike Garrett, Anthony Davis, and even O.J. Simpson. Along the way, he stood taller, played harder, and became the mightiest Trojan of them all.
We used to run on the beach and in combat boots. There was the sand right next to the water, and then there was the heavy sand, and we'd run from pier to pier. I mean, the boots was hard enough, and the sand is doubly hard. I would run right next to the water, which was hard, but Ricky would run in the deep sand and beat me to the pier. I mean, smoke me. I mean, he just had this force within him that you really don't see in a normal person.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers select, as the first selection in the first round, Ricky Bell, fullback, University of Southern California.
The Buccaneers had lost all 14 games in their expansion season in '76, and Coach John McKay had brought so many of his former Southern Cal players in here, and the Tampa became known as Southern Cal East. When they had the opportunity to draft Tony Dorsett out of Pittsburgh and instead took Ricky Bell, a Southern Cal player, Ricky was off to a bad start as strike number one.
Ricky's first 2 seasons were disasters. Not only did he fail to elevate the lowly Bucs, he was deemed personally responsible for their failure.
It was hard for him to understand why people were so down on him. I think he took some of that to heart when it was basically meant to be me. Ricky was out there playing, and they couldn't really get to me that often, and they took it out on Ricky.
Some fans gathered behind the bench and began to berate Ricky Bell personally. He took it as long as he could stand it, and he headed towards the stands. Several players had to restrain him.
Buried by his critics in a shallow grave, Ricky Bell resurrected his career in 1979 and led the Buccaneers to a title.
There was just something about his countenance that made everybody think he was special. He treated everybody special, and yet he'd walk on a football field and become an extremely violent, aggressive runner. He'd knock you down and run over you and then come back and help you up.
He ran so hard that he grunted when he ran. If you were deaf, you could hear him coming.
Bell finally demonstrated why he was chosen first in the 1977 draft. He carried defenders almost 1,300 yards, lifted the Bucs to the NFC Central Championship, and to the brink of the Super Bowl in 1979. But a storybook that began with a honeymoon with Buck fans on the field and a marriage off it concluded with a horrifying final chapter.
The next year, we were not anyways near as good, but he couldn't play very often. He would get an injury, and where he might be out a day or two, he'd be out 2 or 3 weeks. I didn't know the reason why. The trainer and the doctor didn't know the reason why. I summed it up and says, Ricky Bell would like to be on the West Coast. I'm going to put him there.
Traded to the Chargers in 1982, Bell, number 42, played little. Always sick or injured, it was discovered he had contracted a rare skin and muscle disease called dermatomyositis.
Probably 90% of people have a normal lifespan with this disease. Ricky's condition caused inflammation of the muscles of the heart, which occurs in probably less than 5% of cases, and this was distinctly unusual. He had a certain sense of peace with it, that he was struggling with it. He knew that we could only do so much, and he really never let this on to people around him. He was a positive, energetic soul.
On November 28, 1984, the mightiest Trojan lost the one fight he never had a chance to win.
You know, he was a genuinely good person. You know, nobody ever had nothing bad to say about Ricky.
Just a great person. And you know, it's easy to sit back when somebody's passed away and talk about how great he was, but I thought this at the time about Ricky.
Probably the kindest, gentlest football player that I've ever been around. I think he had a sense about him that just made everybody love him.
I loved him, and I thought he was a great player.
Knew how to do everything right. I wish there were a lot more Rickies.
He's gone, but his memory lives on and is strong. When things get bad, I just look at how bad things were him right before he died. He never complained. You know, he was the kind of guy I don't know, he was a once in a lifetime person. He was one in a million, you know, he was a one in a million guy.